You're listening to the Whole Hog Sports Podcast. And now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
On today's show, we look back at Arkansas's game against Ole Miss over the weekend. Christina Long's in studio. We'll also have Taylor McGregor, who was on the sideline for ESPN. First, a word from Kendall King.
At Kendall King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kendall King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kendall King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
You know, in Arkansas's first 2 games of the year, the question was, what is the defense going to look like whenever they finally play a brand name opponent? Against Ole Miss on Saturday, not very good. Lots of yards. And it's not so much about the yards, it's just how frequently Ole Miss was able to go down and score on Arkansas. 5 touchdown drives or 5 scoring drives in the first half, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. They scored on 7 of their first 8 possessions, and Ole Miss won 41-35. Arkansas, they had their chances to win this game, had the ball inside the red zone inside of 2 minutes, and they've got the fumble that causes them to lose the game. There's a lot of talk this week about Sam Pittman and 1-score games. And, you know, honestly, Christina, I thought Arkansas's coaching staff coached the fourth quarter about as well as they could have. First play of the fourth quarter, long pass play. But after that, they shut Ole Miss down for the most part. Defensively, Arkansas did. They get the ball, they go down, they get a 6-minute scoring drive, get a stop, go back down, and they're inside the red zone, and they're threatening to take the lead in the last 2 minutes. But for as good as I think they coached in the fourth quarter, and you can't put the fumble on any coaches because they're not out there playing the game, they coached very poorly, I thought, for the first 2 quarters, and it just took them way too long to get adjusted to what Ole Miss was doing offensively. They let a backup quarterback come in his first real playing time in Division I, and he has a huge game. And, you know, it just kind of felt like this was what maybe it was like all of the worst case scenarios coming true in this game. And we've just seen this kind of performance too often out of Arkansas over the last several years.
Yeah, it was exactly, you know, we talked about what are we going to learn? We're going to see how it goes. And it went, like you said, about as poorly as it could have. And then to your point there at the end, the defense actually finally stepped up and did what they needed to do. And then of course it's a turnover that you know, crushes the dream for them. And it's just, I think what's so interesting to me is that last season, a lot of times, you know, the defense wasn't perfect last year, but, you know, a lot of times it was the defense was keeping them in games long enough for you to kind of wait and see if the offense was going to get anything done or, you know, make up for all the turnovers the offense was having throughout the games. And then this year, they finally have an offense with, you know, the ability to, you know, we talked early in this or before the season about, the offense last year put up so many yards, didn't turn it into points. Now you've got an offense that's turning into points. They're moving the ball really well. They're pretty multiple. And then all of a sudden your defense can't do anything and your defense is doing you no favors and you have to rely on your offense to win you games. And they are going to get in that situation a lot this year. I really think that they will. And I think, you know, some of the opponents on their schedule could lend themselves pretty well to Arkansas being able to score a lot, but ultimately, you can't have these kinds of things happen with a fumble. You know, you have to get a break on defense like they did late, you know, when they were able to get that key stop. And, you know, it's going to be really hard to predict some of these games.
I watched 2 games this weekend that made me think of this, but the importance of having a pass rush to your secondary. The Razorbacks on Saturday night were this way, and the Dallas Cowboys were this way against the Giants yesterday. If you can't rush the passer, then you just need to go ahead and concede the fact that you're going to give up some big shots over the top of the defense. Happened in the Cowboys game yesterday. They couldn't get to Russell Wilson. Happened in the Razorback game Saturday night when they couldn't get to Trinidad Chambliss. And I don't know that I see this. You know, Dallas went out and they signed Jadeveon Clowney after the game yesterday. That may help them. When you're the Razorbacks, you don't get that option. You have to live with this roster that you have recruited 8-9 months ago, and now I don't know that I see this getting any better for them this year. David Okie's been out, but I don't think David Okie is going to improve the pass rush. And so I don't know how this gets better this year, how they get that pass rush to take some of the pressure off of the secondary.
Yeah, and that's what's been really hard about the defensive line is, we talked about the depth problems, but also, like you said, even when you get David Oki back, he only played 8 snaps the other day. I think they're kind of just trying to work him back as they can. But like we've talked about, it seems like from what we know right now, he's kind of just like another capable guy that you can throw in there to spell somebody. But it's difficult. I think you're right about the pass rush situation. I think Ole Miss it was kind of tough for them to get that much, partly because of just the way that their offense functions, but also, they were kind of getting worked on the front. And so I just think there's a lot of problems. And I think I was thinking about this while Coach Pittman was speaking today. I don't know how much you can do in season. What is, even if you do everything you can do in season, how much better, it can obviously get better, but how much better? Can it completely change? Can it suddenly become good, or can it just get less bad? I don't know. And that's what they're trying to figure out. He talked about how the open field tackling was abysmal. And he talked about how that's something they really have to emphasize this week, because they're about to look at another really mobile quarterback and another really good running back in Memphis this weekend. And so they have to do better in the open field. And I don't know, how much just, drills throughout the year in season can help you with that. I don't know. And so I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is how they adjust. It's still pretty early. I mean, it's funny, you look at your 3 games in and it feels still early, but it's actually, it's a quarter of the season is over. So at the same, it's early, but at the same time, you have to kind of get on it now. It has to improve. And I think Memphis is, it's not going to be an easy test for them next.
Ole Miss, by the way, 63% of their yards through the air on Saturday came after the catch. They had 226 yards after the catch out of 357 total.
Yeah, it's really bad.
It's not just the tackling, and it's not just the cover. The angles that these defensive backs are taking, they're bad, real bad.
Yeah, and I don't know, how much of that is fixable week to week. I like I said, I don't think it's going to stay this bad all year, but I don't know what you do, week to week to kind of make that better.
But this is the defense before they've had injuries.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when they have an injury to a key guy or two,
yeah.
which is probably going to happen.
They're going to be down a starter in the secondary. Now, he didn't have a great game before the injury, Kenai Walker, but they're going to be down a starter, and Jaheim Singletary has struggled before. Ole Miss, we were talking about this, some of the other reporters and I, before Coach Pittman came out to talk to us today, and it was like, we couldn't, it was surprising that Ole Miss didn't go at Singletary, because Singletary, other teams have done that, last season and things like that, and had a lot of success. And so they're going to need him to do well until Walker gets back. And they need Walker. Walker had been one of their better DBs, in the first couple games, but then he didn't look good against Ole Miss, and they are going to need somebody to kind of step up there.
I know that they prepared for Trinidad Chambliss in this game, but do you think that there was anything that Ole Miss did offensively that, obviously they were not prepared for what Ole Miss did offensively, but do you think that there was anything that Ole Miss did offensively that surprised Arkansas?
I don't think so. And somebody kind of asked Coach Pittman that today, and he basically was like, no, they didn't do anything that was super unusual. He said there was the one play, I think it was when that guy broke off that like 64-yard run or whatever it was on that kind of crossing route. He mentioned that as kind of like a moment of like, what's going on? But I think overall, it seemed like they were. It was just, I think it was really just lack of execution was really more of it. And I think they were really prepared. They were really prepared. I think from that standpoint, they were prepared. But it was insane lack of execution.
They were ready.
Yeah.
They weren't prepared.
Yes.
There's
And that was actually something really funny. I wish I had the quote in front of me, but that was something that Sam Pittman said. He was answering a question. I don't remember what the question was, but he said something about, he said we were prepared, and then he stopped himself and he said, we prepared. They prepared. They were not prepared.
It's kind of like
There's a difference.
Kind of the difference between hearing and listening.
Yes, exactly.
I thought that this got away from both defensive staffs in the second quarter, and I thought you saw improvement from both defenses at halftime. A lot of people talk about halftime adjustments, and are they real? Are teams really able to do a whole lot at halftime? Well, I thought in this game, I thought they were able to. They both got stops on their first drive of the second half. But you just look at what happened in this game, and I think that, there's just no time to really get your defense prepared for going back out on the field. It's 7-7 going to the second quarter. And then this is what happens. 4-play, 75-yard touchdown takes 54 seconds. 4-play, 75-yard touchdown drive takes 54 seconds. And this is going back and forth. 4-play, 75-yard touchdown takes 1:51. 10 plays, 75 yards and a touchdown, 4:30. 10 plays, 75 yards and a touchdown, 3:44. 7 plays, 75 yards and a touchdown takes 1:59. And then Ole Miss goes down and kicks the field goal. They go 9 plays, 57 yards in 1:18. I mean, that was dizzying, the way the second quarter played out.
And honestly, that was something that somebody pointed out before the press conference today that I didn't really even realize. Cam Ball played like 60, I think it was like 64 snaps or something. It was over 60 snaps. And how, that's a lot for a defensive tackle. And Trey Biddy asked Sam, is that something we're going to expect? And he was like, we kind of need him to do that right now. And he said some of it was also they couldn't get substitution. There was Ole Miss wasn't subbing, so Arkansas couldn't sub. And so that was kind of a problem. And so that causes some things when your defense is already struggling and then they're also gassed and you can't relieve anybody. And then defensive tackle depth, it's a problem. Who are they going to put in for Cam Ball? Don't know.
Yeah.
So things like that kind of pile up, and this was a game where I think you saw that happen.
And Ole Miss can't fake injuries anymore, so it couldn't slow things down the way it normally has.
Go crazy on the injury report.
Yeah.
That was a whole other thing. Or availability report.
Yeah. Arkansas offensively, I'm beginning to be a believer in the Arkansas offense. Mm-hmm. Taylor Green, thought he played really well the other night. I was impressed with him on that last drive. He went 4 for 6 for like 42 yards, had an 11-yard run that picked up a first down. He was really good. 2 straight games now where he's run for over 100, had 111 rushing yards the other night. There was the one drive where he had like 3 runs for 40 yards. He was really good in this game. A couple of interceptable passes. He got bailed out on one of Arkansas's touchdown drives where there's a penalty away from the play that wiped out an interception by Ole Miss. But, for the most part, I feel like he looks a lot more comfortable this year than he did last year. I feel like he's protecting the ball better this year than he did last year. And he's getting some help in the running game that, I've been real impressed with. Mike Washington, this is 2 straight games where he's broke off a big run. Thought Braylon Russell looked really good as a short yardage back the other night. I feel like Arkansas is going to have the chance, like you said, to keep themselves in games this year because they're playing offense at a really high level.
Yeah, and that was something, like I said earlier, and like we talked about preseason, was okay. We've seen them have yards. All right, you have to produce, and they are turning it into points at a high clip right now. And I'll be, it was hard. Somebody was asking me how much did I feel like Ole Miss's defense was bad versus Arkansas's offense was good, and it's kind of hard. I don't think Ole Miss's defense had a great game, but I also think, it wasn't just Arkansas just running over a really bad defense. I think Ole Miss is going to have a decent defense this year, and so I think we'll learn a little bit more when they get into the schedule and they get in against some of the better SEC defenses, some of the more top end ones. But I think they're going to be able to compete with most of them, and I think the offensive line is dramatically improved. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is really impressive. And I think that the ability, I think Corey Robinson has been, we knew he was a huge get for them when they signed him out of the portal, and he has just been exactly as advertised in pass protection especially. And I think, his run blocking was not great in his career, and it's been better, just looking grade-wise so far. It's early, obviously, but I think that's been huge. Amarian Harris is playing really well. It is huge what a difference that has made for Green, because I think that's creating so much of that comfort that you're seeing.
And we talked about defense injuries there. Offense, it's like really important, it feels like, for them to avoid injuries on offense, because what happens if, a lineman goes down or one of these running backs or something? It can completely change the dynamics of what we're seeing offensively. And based on what we saw Saturday, it feels like they're going to have to score as many points as they can this year to give themselves a chance to win a lot of these games. You can get the latest Razorback news at WholeHogSports.com, most in-depth source for all Arkansas sports, analysis, latest in recruiting, unique stories on all your favorite teams. Subscribe today at WholeHogSports.com. We're joined now by Taylor McGregor. Taylor was on the call Saturday night in Oxford. Taylor, let's start with this. You have the production meetings the day before games. What was it that the coaches talked about maybe in those production meetings that you can share versus in what they were expecting versus what actually happened on the field Saturday night?
I would say the biggest thing for Arkansas was maybe expecting Ole Miss to run the football a little bit more than they did. Now, obviously, there was a question at quarterback. Was it going to be Austin Simmons or Trinidad Chambliss? And maybe that impacted what they thought they were going to do. But I think they probably assumed Ole Miss would run the football more because when you looked at the numbers, I mean, Arkansas, Ole Miss had been the exact same in running the football, and Ole Miss just did not do that as much as maybe they had thought going in. So I would say that was probably the biggest discrepancy as to what maybe happened versus the way that the game played out. But I think both coaches expected it to be a hard fought battle, and that certainly was the case.
Did you get the sense that Austin Simmons was not going to play? I mean, how did that play out over those 24 hours or so that you were in town?
Well, Lane Kiffin told me in an interview on Friday that he was good to go, said he was available, and he ended up being available. But look, they talked up Trinidad in our meetings, and so I wasn't that surprised. And it wasn't just our meetings. I had heard from previous crews, I had heard in different media scrums that they really liked Trinidad and they believe in his skill set, and rightfully so, because what we saw on Saturday was impressive. So I I certainly think they had a lot of hope in Trinidad, and I think considering the ankle injury and what Trinidad's capable of, it made sense to play him against Arkansas.
I don't know if people realize this, Taylor. It seems like every time you have a Razorback game, the game just goes off the rails. I mean, overtime games, double overtime, triple overtime. It never seems like there's a normal, maybe normal is not the right word, but there's never not a game that comes down to the wire when you're there. Have you ever thought about this? And
Of
is
course.
that, does it happen in your other games, or is it?
Well, I have had good games in other games for sure, but it's been amazing with Arkansas. Every game I've had has been right down to the wire, and as a broadcaster now, obviously I am neutral and not biased. And but one thing I am biased towards is I always want a good game.
Mhm.
And so I've been really fortunate when I've covered the Hogs that every game has come right down to the wire, and ultimately that's all I ask for. So I'm glad it's played out that way.
What was it like being in the stadium the other night?
It was fun, and it was a little bit nostalgic for me. I had gone to that stadium a lot in college as a fan, and it's always fun covering the SEC, especially at night. So I love Oxford. I loved being back in Oxford, and it was fun to see the contingency of Arkansas fans and of course Ole Miss fans, and it was a great atmosphere on Saturday night.
Sam Pittman gets a lot of questions about why can the Razorbacks not finish close games more often. This is just in games that you've called: Oklahoma State last year, A&M last year, Ole Miss this year. Do you see any theme that happens with them in these games?
Well, I think you have to look at the turnover margin, right? I mean, I look back at the box score, and really, I mean, Arkansas had more yards. The biggest and everything at the end came down to that turnover at the very end. So I think you have to start there. There were some defensive miscues, but really on both teams. I mean, I didn't think either defense played phenomenal. And so I think you have to look at the turnover margin, and obviously Arkansas lost that. And when you turn the ball over in this conference, things are just not going to go your way more often than not. So that's probably the theme that I would suggest.
What's been your biggest takeaway through 3 weeks of this college football season?
It's awesome. I love college football. Listen, I think it's always funny at the beginning of the year. We tab teams to be X, Y, and Z, and sometimes we're proven wrong, sometimes we're proven right. And so I think it's been interesting to follow. I mean, let's look no further than the team everybody picked to win the SEC and in Texas and Arch Manning, and I don't think it's gone exceptionally well for them the first couple of weeks. So that'll be an interesting one to follow. And look, I didn't think the hype around Arch Manning was fair, considering he had never been a starter consistently in this conference, and it's his first year really being QB1, and to put him as a preseason Heisman favorite, I just don't think that's fair on any young quarterback. And so I did not think it was fair, but I think he struggled, and I don't think the offense at Texas has produced to the way that they would have hoped. So, that's one storyline. I think LSU's been amazing. Everybody was curious how that week game or the week 1 game against Clemson would go, and obviously it went LSU's way. And I think for me right now, they're the best team in the conference. So I don't know. I could go on and on, but it's college football. It's awesome, and there's always things that are unpredictable.
I want to ask you. So you've got South Carolina at Missouri this week on ESPN. That's going to be a 6 o'clock game on Saturday night. This is different than what you do with pro baseball. You obviously you're with the Chicago Cubs for the entire season. In football, a lot of times you're dropping in, and this is the only time you see these teams during the season. How different is that from what you do with baseball, number one? And number two, how do you prepare for these teams who you may have not seen play before?
Yeah, so very different in terms of preparation. So with the Cubs, I'm with them day one at spring training till their final game of the season. So I have real relationships with the guys. I'm around every single day. I know them. I know their parents. I know their wives, girlfriends, whoever it may be.
Mm.
And I've watched basically every single game. And so I don't even have to prepare the way that I do for college football because I've watched. My research for baseball is much more diving into some of the numbers, thinking of different story angles that I could attack and different questions that I could ask the players to, continually take the storylines deeper and deeper. Well, college football, it's different because you don't watch every single minute of every game that every team has. It's just impossible to do. So when you do get teams, it is a little bit of like cramming for a final. So we get our assignment Sunday and then it just begins prep of like trying to get up to speed as if you are an expert and you are like a Taylor McGregor covering the Cubs where you've been around every moment of every day. So I think it's that part's much more challenging, but I also think it's fun from a national perspective because it's a fresh set of eyes. And I think sometimes when you're in the grind of the day to day, you overlook things because you just do. You've been around the team and maybe it doesn't seem as new and as exciting, but it's easier for me as a national broadcaster to come in and find interesting things about the teams because I haven't covered them every single day. So I think there's an element of that I really enjoy. They're just completely different as far as preparation and kind of how you attack the jobs. And then lastly, just the difference in baseball and football is much different too. Baseball lends itself to being much more anecdotal and you can tell different types of stories. For my job as a football reporter, yes, prep is important and I do like to get backgrounds and stories when it's important, but the most valuable thing I can bring the eyes and ears of the sideline and trying to bring a perspective that nobody else has. So with Kenai Walker on Saturday, I was an important piece in that because I was one of the only people being fed that information. And
Mhm.
so I do not take that lightly. That's an important component of my job is to really just be present in the moment. What is the information that the viewer needs to know right now? And so that's what I definitely do in football that you don't do as much in baseball.
Who are the sideline reporters that you look up to, that you look in and say, I can learn something from watching them?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, when I was a student at Arkansas, Laura Rutledge was just starting with the SEC network. And I remember shadowing her and thinking, oh my gosh, she is phenomenal at everything she does and her preparation and the questions she asks and just her approach to everything. Really stood out, and I still think she's phenomenal. I mean, there's a reason I think she's probably the biggest star in our industry right now. She does it all, and so I look up to her. Molly McGrath, who I've gotten to know, who I just adore, and I think she is so good in so many different ways. I think Katie George is phenomenal. Chris Budden. I mean, you can go down the list. I respect all of my colleagues immensely, and I think there's a reason that everybody gets to this level. So there's a ton, but I would definitely say Laura is probably at the top of the list because I've known her since I was in college, and I've kind of got to see the whole path for her.
Katie George is going to be on the call for Arkansas, by the way, Saturday at
Yes,
Memphis.
Katie's awesome.
Yeah, 11 o'clock on ABC. I want to ask you, recently you had about an 11-day stretch where you called games in Dublin, San Francisco, Boulder, Miami, and Chicago. That's 5 different time zones in like 10 days?
Yeah,
What
that
was
was wild.
frequent flyer miles doing okay?
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to Australia business class for free this off season. So if
There you
that
go.
tells you anything about my frequent flyer miles, maybe it makes it worth it when I get to take that trip. So
Mm.
yeah, it was a wild stretch.
More unique calling a game from Dublin or from McCovey Cove in San Francisco?
So, I mean, Dublin was amazing for everything kind of outside of the game, but I think once you got into the game, it I wouldn't say it felt, oh my gosh, this is so different. We're in a foreign country. Like it was kind of the same game and for the most part felt like it could have been played anywhere. McCovey Cove, obviously I have never broadcasted a game from that cove in the water, not being able to really see everything that's happening on the field. So that was probably more unique of the two. Um, and I had also been dreaming of doing that for years. I first started with the Rockies in 2018, and I tried to do it back then, but it's just hard logistically because we had to get our audio people all on top of it to be able to make sure that my microphone would reach all the way out there, that my audio and everything would be set up. So it took time to prepare for that, and I'm just so glad our team finally executed it because it was so fun, and hopefully fans enjoyed it. I've had a lot of awesome feedback. Fans did, so it was so much fun.
How much or how entertaining is this time of year for you? Because college football every week there's entertainment there, but then on the baseball side you've got these games that are coming now down to teams trying to get into the playoffs, and you've got a team there in Chicago that's in the thick of it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Right now, it's not a lot of sleep. It's kind of like, where am I? What am I doing? But I just, in these moments, I just try to stay present where I'm at. So like right now, I'm talking to you, and in an hour, I will be in the clubhouse talking to the Cubs and just trying to stay really present of where I'm at because there are 1.5 million things going on, but all good things. And, somebody said it to me the other day. They're like, you're living the dream. And I was like, thank you for saying that because it was a reminder to me of like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And sometimes when you're in the midst of it and it can be stressful, it can be chaotic, you feel the chaos more than the gratitude. And I just want to live in a place where I'm living in gratitude. And so when people make comments like that, I'm like, you know what? This is what I've always dreamed of. And I need to not take months like this for granted.
Do you ever foresee a day where you've got to choose between having to be a football reporter and a baseball reporter? Because a lot of people, they only, they'll focus on just one, or at least if they're doing two, they don't overlap the way that these seasons do.
Yeah, of course. I think about that all the time. I hope not. Maybe it'll just look different, maybe not covering 100 and however many baseball games. There probably will come a season of my life where I just can't do that many games because that's the nature of the business. And, I do want to get married and have children one day. And I just think it's more challenging to be able to do that in the midst of a baseball season. So I hope I get to cover both sports for a long time. I just understand it might look different in the ways in which I cover them.
Well, Taylor, we appreciate you being with us. Congratulations on all your success so far. You did such a great job.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. It was great chatting with you.
All right, you too. We'll see you soon. When we come back, Christina Long will rejoin me here in studio, but first a word from Kendall King.
At Kendall King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kendall King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kendall King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Hey, welcome back. I want to tell you about our friends at Bentonville Glass. They've been serving their community since 1971, committed, professional, versatile. If you're looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas or looking for skilled craftsmanship, look no further than Bentonville Glass for all your glass market needs with the highest quality products. You can come by and see them now at 507 South Main in Bentonville or online at bentonvilleglass.com. Watching around the rest of the league, not even the league, but just the country, but especially the league this last weekend. Boy, it feels like Arkansas is going to have a chance to be in a lot of these shootouts this year. I mean, you look at Tennessee, Georgia. Georgia beats Tennessee 44-41 in overtime. Both of those teams scored 38 in regulation. A&M beats Notre Dame 41-40. Arkansas, they play Memphis this week, and then their next three are Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas A&M. I don't think all three of those games are going to be 41-35 type shootouts like we saw in Oxford last week, but it wouldn't surprise me if one or two of them were.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. And I think, Notre Dame's defense has some problems. They have Purdue this weekend, I believe, and so that'll be kind of their best chance at kind of a get-right thing.
The most points they've ever given up in their 2 games in program history.
Really? I didn't see that. That's crazy.
And their defense coordinator is Chris Ash, who Arkansas fans are aware of, well aware of. He was here in 2013. He's on the hot seat already. And the weird thing with me about A&M and Notre Dame the other day was that these are two defensive-minded head coaches. I mean, Mike Elko was a defensive coordinator and Marcus Freeman was a defensive coordinator. And I don't know, sports are real cyclical in terms of some years you have high-scoring years and some years it's a little bit lower. And it feels like we're in a cycle right now where if Georgia, a defensive-minded head coach, Kirby Smart, if they're giving up 41 to Tennessee and you've got it just feels like we're in a cycle where it could be a really high-scoring year, not just for Arkansas, but for a lot of teams.
Yeah, it does feel like it kind of goes that way. Offenses get ahead and then defenses kind of catch up, and then offenses innovate and find new ways to get around that, and then defenses kind of figure out how to solve for it. So, yeah, I mean, I think I didn't get to watch much of Notre Dame Texas A&M at all because of being at the game on Saturday, but I've been reading a little bit, mostly from the Notre Dame perspective, about like, hey, what's going on? And they've lost 2 close games against some really difficult opponents, so it's not like it's a lost season for them right now. But I think they're going to be at a pretty they're going to be at kind of a critical point when they play Arkansas, because you assume they'll beat Purdue, because Purdue is just not very good. So they'll be kind of, Arkansas will be kind of their next big game, their next big test for them, coming into an SEC stadium on the road and everything that comes with that. But I think you're right about kind of the way that defensive coaches and offenses are kind of, it does feel like we're kind of in a shift.
Underestimate Barry Odom at your own peril, Christina. He's the leader of Purdue now. Notre Dame got robbed, by the way, the other night. A&M, they still would have had a chance to score on 4th down, but Notre Dame's pass rusher in that situation, I don't know if it was their best pass rusher or not, but the guy who's coming through after the quarterback gets tackled by an offensive lineman, and there is no holding penalty. That was bad. Yeah. That was real bad.
Yeah, there was some interesting – I feel like every game I watched, even some of the NFL games, there was just a lot of ref stuff happening. I feel like in Arkansas's game, every game I happened to put on, there was just something kind of squirrely happening in terms of officiating.
Yeah. Let's see here. Did they say? No, they didn't say last week. The SEC usually says who they're sending to these games. I think that was an SEC crew in South Bend. I think that's how that works, is that if you've got a home and home, that you send your crew with like your conference's team on the road, and then like when Notre Dame came to College Station last year, if I've got this right, and I think I do, that would have been an ACC crew because Notre Dame's got the affiliation with the ACC, even though they're not an ACC member. So, yay, SEC refs, I guess.
Every Arkansas fan favorite.
Can I tell you about a term that I learned this weekend, by the way?
What?
Jack and I were watching the Tennessee-Georgia game. Jack is my 7-year-old. And my wife had been out, and she came home, and he's explaining to her what has happened to this point. And he said that a team overturned the ball, and now this team had it. And I almost corrected him. I was like, no, you mean turned over. But then I started thinking about it. It's like,
he's not technically wrong.
It actually kind of works.
Yeah.
So we may start saying overturned instead of turnovers.
Yeah.
Now.
I just think of overturned in the context of a call being overturned. Like, I feel like because it already has like such a strong association with
you have overturned the ball back to the other team.
Yeah, yeah.
It works.
It does. It is not technically wrong. It's just like not the usual.
Right.
But it's not technically wrong.
This is how it works when you have kids, by the way, is that you in your house, and I think a lot of people who have kids will probably be able to relate with this. So maybe you're able to relate with it from when you were a kid and what happened with your parents. You have words that become words in your house.
We have that. 2 adults in my house, we have that.
Yeah, so it's like, but a lot of times it's because your kids, either they don't completely understand a concept or because they can't say the full word. Mm-hmm. So like in our house, we don't say Gatorade, we call it Gade. Hey, will you go get me a purple Gade out of the fridge? Or we don't call it the remote. We call it the moat.
The moat.
So it's like, hey, will you get the white moat? There's a white moat and there's a black moat for every TV.
That's hilarious.
That's how this works.
Yeah, there's a term for, I've like seen, I feel like, Instagram reels about this. I feel like there's like a term for that, about like the language that you develop inside your own household or like inside of a particular group. It's very interesting that we have that in our house, and it's just 2 grown-ups.
So Arkansas overturned the ball one time Saturday night at Ole Miss. Also this weekend, UCLA and Virginia Tech have already gotten in line for the coaching carousel. And I think this thing is going to spin as wild as we have ever seen this year, because there were so many teams that held off last year making changes at the top because they had to figure out what they were going to do with their budgets in the House settlement. Okay, the budgets are balanced now, and we can get back to
being crazy.
Behavior as normal,
Yeah.
which is firing coaches after 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And so Virginia Tech and UCLA, they're already in line. I would not be surprised if Florida is in line before the end of the season. Oklahoma State has to figure out what they're going to do with Mike Gundy. I would be shocked if there's not conversations going on in Stillwater right now of how do we address this? You don't want to fire this guy who's been your coach for 20 years in the middle of a season. You want to show him a level of respect for getting your program, to the level that or the success that it's enjoyed while he's been there. But something's going to have to change there. And then, you think about all the other teams. What happens with Auburn and Hugh Freeze? What happens with Arkansas and Sam Pittman? I think this is going to be a crazy year.
Yeah.
And you've already got these two teams, these power teams, that are lining up and trying to, in my opinion, now I know they're both 0-3, but in my opinion, they're trying to line themselves up and position themselves to where they can get the first pick so long as there's somebody that will have them.
Because neither of them is a particularly attractive job. I mean,
UCLA
UCLA
is
is
terrible.
really bad. I mean, it's on a different level than Virginia Tech. But Virginia Tech, has history and things like that. But in recent years, I mean, didn't their AD just speak to their board of trustees or their equivalent a few weeks ago, just basically talking about how broke they are, and everybody saw it and everybody knows about it? It's not it's not good. It's not an attractive situation. The ACC is not where you want to be, and so neither of them is a particularly attractive job. So it makes sense that they would want to kind of start that process early and kind of get out in front of it. But I'll be very interested what kind of guy they're able to get.
UCLA, like you said, they're a totally different level of bad, and it's not about Nico Iamaleava or Deshaun Foster. There is number one, their stadium. They play in the Rose Bowl, and it's just nobody comes to the games. They played New Mexico out there on a Friday night last week, and there might have been 8,000 people in the stands. I've heard Troy Aikman talk about this. He said that UCLA, number one, the Rose Bowl is quite a distance away from their campus. He said they need to build a small on-campus facility, probably something that seats 30, 40,000, kind of like what Stanford has. And, the dynamics in those pro markets out on the West Coast is so different than what it's here in these little college towns, what we live in, not that little here, but, in these college towns like Fayetteville or Oxford or Starkville, where there's so much interest in the team. I remember being out in Tempe one year for, I think it was a super regional or a regional, because they played there back-to-back years, super one year and a regional the next. And it was the decisive game of whatever this was. And I'm looking around this little 2,500-seat stadium on Arizona State's campus, and there's probably 500 to 800
Nobody
seats
cares
that are
about
empty.
college baseball outside of the South and maybe parts of California.
And I'm sitting there thinking about, if this was in Fayetteville, you would have 12,000 in the ballpark and another 500 to 1,000 outside the gates trying to figure out how they could get in.
Yeah.
And that's for baseball. And so imagine what it's like for football. But there's so much interest in pro sports in these, I still call them Pac-12 towns, even though I know they've all scattered about.
Spiritually
But,
Pac-12.
Seattle and San Francisco and Phoenix and LA. There's so much pro interest there that it just takes away from the college interest. And then when you've got a team like UCLA that hasn't done hootin' who knows when, that's a bad situation.
And I don't think their, administration or anything like that, I don't think they really prioritize football. Not that they're I just don't think that they're really, people, I feel like people don't throw this word around as much, but for a while people kind of threw around the word alignment. You have to have alignment from the whole university.
Top-down alignment.
And I don't feel like they really have that and haven't for a while. And so that's also something that's unattractive as a candidate. So them and Virginia Tech, I'll be very interested to see what level of guy, what profile of coach they're able
Virginia
to get.
Tech is going to throw everything they have, all $5 they have left in the bank account at Shane Beamer.
It's not going to be enough, right? Surely.
I don't know.
I guess I don't know what South Carolina.
How does this season go for South Carolina? Because they lost. They got it handed to them by Vanderbilt the other night, and their offense looks terrible.
Yeah.
And now their quarterback, who they thought was all world and hasn't been all world, but now he's out. How does that go for them?
Yeah.
And does Shane Beamer, does he? Some people leave home and they want to get back home. Some people leave home and they never want to go back. Yeah. And so that's a weird deal there. Virginia Tech's been so bad for their standards for several years now. That does he want to go in there and take on that
Do you
type
wanna
of
have to
rebuild?
build? Yeah.
But whoever goes in there, and especially if your last name is Beamer, you know that you're going to get some time to get this ship righted.
That's true.
That's something I think that's really interesting to watch for the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I think he'll have to get a lot of promises, not just from a salary standpoint from Virginia Tech to make that attractive. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting coaching cycle, like you said, because but you didn't have no SEC jobs open last year. You might have a few this year.
It's going to be wild.
Yeah.
And it may be, like I said, it may be one of those deals where it's easier to win at Virginia Tech than it is at South Carolina. Like if you go into the playoff, if that's your goal, you've got a better chance of doing that in the ACC than you have at a program in the SEC that's historically in the bottom half of the conference.
Yeah.
So,
Right. I mean, like, we're talking about Clemson and how bad they look. They could still get in. I mean, the ACC, like, what are they going to do? It's Miami and then who? Duke?
this year,
Yeah.
I mean Clemson most years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. Like, this Clemson team
they're
looks
not,
bad.
yeah.
But, like, they might still
Florida
be
State
pretty
maybe.
good.
Florida State might be pretty good this year.
because they haven't played anybody since they won that game. So, I mean, we'll see. But yeah, so the ACC is just, you have a much clearer path, like you were saying, and so I think that changes some things. And also, a lot of these guys, a lot of coaches there aren't a lot of coaches out there that feel that they can handle that kind of build. Like, they have the confidence to say, I can be the one to fix this. Like, there's a lot of coaches out there that kind of fit that mold. So it's not like you necessarily are have to be begging people from that standpoint. But I think there's a lot, there's so many factors that go into these things.
Are you saying you were not impressed by Florida State's 77-3 win over East Texas A&M?
Formerly Texas A&M Commerce.
Possible.
Former home of Andrew Armstrong. Yeah, that's them. Yeah.
I knew that one of them changed their
Yeah.
names recently.
Yeah.
Okay, let's finish with this. It's too early to look at efficiency ratings, but if we were, okay.
If one were to.
If one were to have run the numbers late Saturday night and come up with some numbers, this is what they would probably look like. Again, it's too early for people who haven't listened to us before or last year. Our efficiency ratings, basically, you take. It's basically points and possessions and the efficiency at which you score the maximum number of points that are available to you. And I only use games against Power 4 teams. I don't care what Arkansas does against Alabama A&M or Arkansas State because they're just not on the same level. So we're still at this point in the season where everybody's played at least one Power 4 team now. Some have played multiple Power 4 teams. And then, obviously you've got varying levels within the Power 4. It by the end of the year, this shakes out really nicely. And really by the end of the month, we'll get a feel for what these efficiency ratings look like. But this is just where it stands right now. The best offense in the SEC?
I don't remember.
Vanderbilt.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Vanderbilt's number
How
one.
could I forget?
Arkansas would be number 2. Again, that's just based on what they did against Ole Miss. And Missouri would be number 3, and that's only based on what they did against KU. The best defense in the SEC right now is LSU. Now, is the defense good, or are Florida and Clemson's offenses just that bad? There's a chance that maybe it's both.
Yeah.
But LSU defensively has been really good this year. OU and Florida both have really good scores as well. Florida got to play LSU. LSU has got one of the worst offenses in the SEC right now. Arkansas's got the worst defense by a large margin. They gave up 65% of all points possible to Ole Miss the other night. It was terrible. Texas has got the worst offense in the SEC right now. That's only based on the game against Ohio State. Again, all of this is very early. But then this is really the interesting one to me. The best offensive and defensive combination score right now belongs to Vanderbilt because of what they did against Virginia Tech and South Carolina. And they won both of those games really convincingly. There's a path there, by the way, for Vanderbilt to make some playoff noise. I'm not going to say they're going to get in the playoff,
Right.
but you look at the teams they got at home and the teams they got on the road, and they win a couple of games over teams that are ranked right now. Maybe you're talking about them in late October and November whenever the show starts. I don't think they're making the playoff, but that's a pretty cool story what's happening there at Vanderbilt. And then the 3 worst teams in the SEC right now based on offensive and defensive scores, and again, very early, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Texas.
Wow.
You would not have thought two of those three
Yeah,
would be in there
yeah.
at the start of the preseason.
That's for sure. That's for sure. That's crazy. I really like Matt does a really good job with the efficiency rating. He says hour. They're all his. He does all the work on it. And so, yeah, we'll start having those on our website, once they get into
See the spreadsheet?
deeper into SEC play.
See, it's going.
Impressive. Yeah.
By the end, it'll be several columns deep. But
yeah, they're really helpful. Those are genuinely really helpful.
you know what's fun about these is that they take all biases out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter because what I'll end up doing is I'll end up start making predictions based on these, and it doesn't matter who's at home, who's injured, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
And they hit on I'd say probably 80 to 90% of the games every year. So I think there's again, who cares about yards? It's all about points and possessions. How many points are you scoring based on the number of opportunities that you have to score? And in Arkansas's case, offensively, they're doing good. Defensively, it's about as bad as I've seen since I've been doing these numbers. The game they had against Ole Miss the other night, one of the worst games I've seen from Arkansas, even though the Ole Miss game last year was worse than this year's Ole Miss game. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. I spent the weekend out at Baumwalker Stadium. I was there on Saturday with Joe Healy from D1Baseball.com. He'll be on the show tomorrow. We'll nerd out over baseball for about 15 minutes, and Christina will be back here in the studio. We'll talk some more Razorback football tomorrow on the show. Hope that we see you at our website, wholehogsports.com. Have a great day, everybody.